Let's just situate ourselves. It is Tuesday, and oh my gosh, my hair is all. I ride my bike to work, so it's all like whatever. Maybe we'll just restructure it here. Okay, welcome to my podcast. This is the Celestic Intelligence Podcast. I am your host, Amelie, and I am so pleased to be the creator, the host, and to deliver this transmission today. It is episode number 69, and tonight we're going to be talking about retrocausality. And if you guys have been following me, you know that this is a part of a whole arc of how to really, it's just this. How can I say it? It's really this guided way of, if once you get this figured out and build that foundation, then we're adding a structure, a nice frame to our beings, and we're just kind of building this beautiful house and going inward and building this inner cathedral that we can be in, come back to, and really claim uh, the birthright that we were born here to have. Okay. So tonight, we went through the foundation, we went through the structure, and now we're in the direction. Now we're talking about movement and time. So we started with what happens when you get up to the threshold, and then now, yesterday, I was talking about the Jubilee consciousness, what happens at the threshold moment. Um, because really what happens at a threshold is you're letting go of something old and you're now initiating yourself into something new. Okay. And if you feel that energy in your life, this is why. Because energetically, we're in this time right now. Okay. But today we're going to talk about how time kind of orients around us when we start listening to the messages that are coming in, right? Really using that heart brain to meet out where we are in time. So, retro causality and threshold consciousness is really kind of the topic for tonight. And it may be a little bit hard for me to talk about because we're talking about the future. It's still a little unknown. However, we can know that it does orient in a certain way. So it's the core thesis of tonight is we're going to be looking at it as, what if the future is not only something we move toward, meaning it's not just a linear line that we're just moving across. And some of you might feel this in a different way than others. We are the authors of our own lives. So really what I've been talking about for the last 3 months is about really reclaiming that inner authority that you have within yourself. All right. And now we're going to start reorganizing what our life looks outside of that. So once you start really building the foundation, really coming into to who you are and the things that you were here to do, the things that are going to bring you purpose in your life. We're going to be kind of talking about that. You're going to be reorganizing around that. So we're going to talk about how retrocausality is not just something that we're moving towards. It's not just this one goal, right? But it's also something that organizes us from ahead. Okay. Jason Bowman, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining. Pleasure to have you. It's episode 69. It's kind of crazy. Most podcasts don't make it past episode 20, and I just keep on showing. Whop it! I know this is going to be fun, and please feel free to add comments in here because like I said, retrocausality is a little difficult to talk about, to like organize words around sometimes. For me, at least, I feel that way because It's very much unknown. And then finding the proper words to like deliver that to people who haven't maybe been following along and know where we're coming from, just having those building blocks of that. So please ask questions, please add comments in, and try to stay on the subject. Okay, try to stay on the subject. I'll do the same. But good to see you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Okay, so so most people think that causality is only moving in one direction, meaning if I do something cause, then it's going to happen this way, the effect. Okay. So they just look at it from a cause and effect standpoint. And that really is this direction of moving forward. So what it looks like is we have the past, we have the present, and then we have the future. And it's just a very linear line. Okay. But what if our human bodies, our human life is more interactive than just past, present, future? Okay. In the past, I did this, and now the effect is this in the future, the cause and effect. And I'm not taking down cause and effect. Cause and effect is obviously like there is a principle there. However, the interaction that we're doing around the cause and effect, all right, that is what kind of reinterprets the causality, the cause and effect, into retrocausality. Now we can start interacting in different ways than just past, present, and future. We're just sitting in the present, waiting for the future to happen. Um, our weapon says, I think it has a lot to do with the recontextualization. Every new thing not only changes the trajectory of the future, but also the context of the past. I'm going to take my gum out because it's annoying me. It might be annoying you guys too. Yeah, so we're interacting in a way with time and movement and direction in a different way. And if you guys are unfamiliar with it, look into it. The double slit experiment. This is very much quantum physics that we're talking about, and I think a lot of this information has largely been unavailable to people until really recently. And I mean recently, as in like the last 50 to 100 years. But with the last 50 years, with an acceleration of accepting some of these principles that were probably really hard for older societies to really put their heads around. Because even now, I feel that it's taken me a long time to kind of integrate this into, and I'm a pretty forward open thinker, and so it's a really fascinating thing to look at and how we can interact with it. Okay. So we're looking at what if the human life is more interactive than past, present, future, and looking at the possibility of the future exerting a certain amount of pressure too. Okay. And this is where retrocausality will enter. So let's really talk about what is retrocausality, because it could feel a little science fiction to hear about it. But I'm not making any claims of certainty of what it is. So like I said, it's going to be a little bit new, especially if we haven't established the foundation, the structure of our own identity and how we interact with that. It's going to be really difficult to kind of step into retrocausality and really understand how it is working in your life. So we're exploring philosophical, psychological, symbolic, and consciousness oriented interpretation when we look at what is retrocausality. Okay. So we're looking at this from a time plus human development perspective. So when I say like we have to have that foundation, and I say this because my main goal of having this podcast was how do I enter into some of these um, like fantastical, transcendental human experiences like time traveling, like, going in and out of dimensions, um, even levitating. Um, what's it called? Multi-location of your spirit in different areas at the same time. How do I access that technology that we're built with, that we're born with? How do I access that technology, but do it safely, where I'm not just leaving my body and then my body is like available for access to any entity that wants to like move in, right? I want to do this in a safe way where I'm still in complete control of my body. I have complete authority of it without inviting any other entity into it. It's not welcome in my body, right? It's my soul and human spirit is in this body. And so that's why when I talk about how important it is for us to really get around how do we manage our multiple identities and our multiple roles and make it make sense. And really importantly, the addition of that digital age, the digital technology that's around us and how we interact with that, it's adding a new layer that um to my knowledge, humans really haven't had to experience in the same way that we are in our generation. If you were born and alive in the 80s and then beyond, like we are in this new digital space where all of these metaverses are being built around us. Okay. And a metaverse is not something new. If you've ever dreamed, you've been in a metaverse. If you've ever daydreamed, you've been in a metaverse. If you've ever played a game online, you've entered a metaverse. So, like, that's metaverses are very interesting, and the digital world creates more and more and more possibilities of metaverses for you to engage and enter with. And with those metaverses, a part of your identity kind of gets horcruxed, for lack of a better term, into these spaces. So, human development, meaning I would, from what I understand, and as I'm moving along and learning about this and incorporating it into my life, because I have a certain goal, and maybe that changes in the future, but I have a certain goal of where I want to go and how I want to get there. And so I've declared like I want to be able to access this technology. Um, and I also want to do it safely to where I'm not fragmenting my psyche in order to get to my destination. Okay. And so this involves playing with this time and movement element of how we get there. Okay. So, a simple definition of retrocausality is the idea that the future states may influence present behavior and perception, organization, or probability. Um, I I have I can't remember where it came from exactly, but when somebody was explaining 4D, fourth dimension, which is time, and then the fifth dimension, which is probabilities of anything happening, is that 5D expanse. Um, I thought that was really interesting and amazing. And it really gave me a lot of things to like bounce ideas off of when somebody explained all of the dimensions to me. And I haven't gotten into six or seven or beyond 8D. Just because it's hard for me to conceptualize. So I kind of stick with 3D, 4D, 5D, just until I am able to handle that information enough and conceptualize it enough to make that make sense. Okay. So, uh, a bit softer way of saying this might be future possibilities may pull on us before they fully arrive. Okay. Now, this could be an idea of miracles, and or maybe you think like, oh, I really want X to happen, and I don't know how it's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, like the opportunity arises, and it's more fantastical, and you're just like, wow, like I couldn't even have imagined it would have come in that certain type of way. And so a lot of people, they kind of dive into manifestation, um, and yeah, manifestation is great. I don't really like lean on it too much in my own world. I like to feel surprised. I like to know like, okay, I'm present in my being, and I have certain directions that I want to go, and I like them to arrive and just surprise me in that way, where like there's there's a certain thing like, oh, I really would like a vehicle upgrade. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'd really like that. Okay. And maybe you're in meditation and prayer, and you're always just like thinking, like, at some point, I really want to have this upgrade in my life. And then it happens in this really miraculous, fantastical way that you didn't even see that probability coming. Maybe it was somebody that you were talking to just casually, and then all of a sudden, like, that spread to somebody else that was able to provide that for you. So you don't know all the probabilities, and that's what the 5D is just this multitude of probabilities of things happening, and you don't necessarily get to choose them, but those decisions in the future are affecting your present state, because your perception and how you organize your life is affecting those outcomes, right? Um, so where the idea appears. So, humans already organize around imagined futures. Okay. So, some of the things I was just talking about, like examples of that, are goals. You might have certain goals that you want. For me, I love having goals. It gives me something to kind of look forward to, it gives me something to organize my life around. I have a goal. Maybe it's, I want to save $5,000 so I can go on a trip to Greece or whatever. That's your goal. And so you're going to do things in your life that, okay, I really want that. And now you're going to start organizing and making choices based on that goal. And in the future, right? If you're in Greece, you can kind of look back on, oh, wow, I remember when I just wanted to go on this and I was saving up. Maybe it's even buying a house. Like that could be a thing. Whatever the goal is, you have that imagined future of what that looks like. And then the future and the present are playing together with each other. Hi, Patricia. Welcome. Hello. Hello and hi. Um, Okay. And then other examples are fears. Fears may be guiding you, and it could be real. Like, you might have a fear of flying. You might have a fear of, taking a chance on a promotion. You might have a fear of going outside. Whatever the fear is, that is going to start organizing around you as well. I hate you. My name is not the person. My name is Steven. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Great. Hi, Glover clan. How are you? Your at is Patricia RZ9FU. Whatever you're scared of is shoving your umbrella up, and I don't understand what you're talking about. All right. So the next example are visions. Maybe you have visions. Okay. Um, I know that I have, at some points in my life, I will have visions of things. It will just be like I'll just see a thing, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's very out there and wild." And then I'll just kind of keep it to myself, but then find people to talk about it safely with, right? So you might have those visions. You might even see visions of for other people and be sharing those things with them, interacting with their own, timelines and their movement and their directions. Um, so these are humans organizing around imagined futures, and expectations can be, right? So we're not just talking about positive things. It could be negative things. You might have certain expectations where if they're not met, then you're not happy, right? We were talking about fears. Those are also negative things that could happen that are affecting that timeline and that future. Um, Other examples are prophecies. Okay, so prophecies could be happening. Some people are just gifted in having prophecy, right? So they're able to like see a certain future, and so they can go in and they can say, "Hey, this is likely to happen." Um, and or identity projections. People might have a certain identity that they're just like, it could be an old identity that their body is like trying to reject, and they're just refusing to do that, and because of that it's going to affect that imagined future. Okay, so the future changes present behavior constantly. Okay, oh sorry, the future changes present behavior constantly, whatever that future is. So let's say that you do have an identity projection, that that identity is that old identity and it doesn't want to go away. And, your future is like, nope, that's going away. And maybe that's having some effect on how you are in your identity. You're like, I don't want to give this up, but it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to keep this identity together. Like I keep on sabotaging myself, I keep on doing, whatever, that your body is starting to reject that old identity because that future one is moving in, and it's like it's got to go, it's got to go. Okay? So it's interacting with itself there. Mike, hello. Um I know I'm having a hard time following whatever is happening in the chat. Okay. So we don't merely remember forward, we just anticipate what is forward. Okay. Whatever's in that future, we're anticipating it. And anticipation is actually a really nice gift. It's a very nice gift. Like think of being in that feeling of anticipation. Maybe you have a really awesome vacation coming up and you're just anticipating it. Maybe there's maybe you're gonna have a wedding and you're just anticipating it, or maybe a birthday party, and like if you're a child, and that is like something that you're just like anticipating. I like to think of, when you're a child and you're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna go to the park, or we're gonna go to this restaurant, or we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there. This person's coming. That anticipation is such an exciting and positive experience that when we apply it to the idea of retrocausality and the future that's coming in, that anticipation of not knowing what it's going to be like to experience it, but to like know that it's coming is very exciting. So, that anticipation is a beautiful gift that we as humans get to experience emotionally. And I believe it's one of the cities, if I'm not mistaken, Gate 40 in Gene Keys. And so that gift of anticipation is a beautiful thing. Okay, so that was psychologically. Now, in physics, certain interpretations in quantum discussions explore nonlinear relationships with time. So, what does that mean? A lot of people think of time as linear. It's just this line that goes, today is, May 26th. and tomorrow's going to be May 27th, and then at the end of the year is December 31st, and we're just on this, we're just cruising along with time, okay? Now, in quantum discussions, time is not linear, okay? Time is very cyclical. And for people that haven't been exposed to that, um, it's very hard to conceptualize. Newbie here, fill me in. Fill me up. All right, Riven, let's go. Riven 1911. That's funny. I was born at 1911. 7:11 at night. Our Rappin says the present is inclusive of the past and the future because it is the continuity between them. The past and the future are basically other presents or part of the present in an overarching story, right? It's just like it's like cyclical, and like I get what you're saying, and hopefully the audience gets what you're saying too. Is like in the past there was a present, and in the future it is a present, but it's just like in different times. It's such a fun discussion. All right. So, some physicists have explored whether causality may be more complex than strict linear mechanics, right? So, the physicists are already looking at how, they have their linear times, but then they're also seeing like the complexity of how that can be interpreted, okay? Um, they're definitely seeing how the linear timeline doesn't always make sense, and they're able to like build out on that. So organisms, just living organisms, it doesn't have to be humans, um, typically orient towards future survival. All right. One thing my mom used to say all the time, because we gardened a lot, and if you've ever gardened over a period of time, you know that maybe the first garden you have, um, you fail to water it one day, and then all of a sudden you come out and everything's just dead, and you're like, oh my gosh, right? But my mom would always tell me, and it was just kind of repetitive, stuck in my head, is everything wants to live, and that really is this organisms orienting towards future survival. So even humans, what is fear? Fear is a fear of death because we want to survive. So if you're fearing going and doing a public speaking event, which is a very common fear for people to have, and like getting up there and grabbing a mic and being looked at while you're talking is terrifying for a lot of people. A lot of people will be terrified about that. And why is that? It's because, you know, it's a fear of public speaking, which is a fear of being seen. And if you're seen, then the predators are going to be out to get you. And then when the predators get you, they're going to kill you and you're going to die. Okay. So that's one way that you can kind of map out that fear of public speaking just being a fear of death. So organisms naturally orient to survival. So even in our amygdala brains, when we're like, we just need to freeze, we can't be seen, be quiet, don't breathe. That's why like shallow breathing is a sign that your body is in a survival mode, and why breathing is so important, to feel big and even hold that posture up nice and big so that you are seen and you feel safe, and you're like, look, I'm safe, I'm being seen, I'm showing up, being really big, chest out. Like the posture is very important for you to really get into that rest and digest and non-survival mode, so you're not in your amygdala anymore, you're in your prefrontal cortex operating in life. Okay. So life behaves anticipatorily. So life is anticipating survival. And it doesn't matter if it's a human or if it's a seed that you planted, it all wants to live. It just needs the basic things for it to do that. So, for humans, it's breathing, and then water, and then food, and then shelter. And like once you start to get all these basics, then like that future survival feels a little bit more relaxing. You're able to like lean back into that. Kindred Angels is here too. Hello, babes. Um, okay, I think I'm caught up in the chat. All right. So, seeds grow towards conditions that they've never consciously experienced, okay? So they'll orient themselves to survive as much as they can, as best as they can. And those are, somewhat easy things for scientists to kind of play around with is how do we get a seed to be drought tolerant? How do we, how do we change the dynamics of this seed to be suited for this grow zone or whatever it is. So humans do this in a psychological way as well. Like we're looking at how do we anticipate the future and orient ourselves in our present so that we can go towards wherever we're deeming to go. Now, if that is a fear, you're going to definitely figure that out. If it's a goal, you're going to be able to figure that out, right? So these are just the examples that I was providing. Um, Maybe the expectation or the vision of whatever that future is going to look like. You're going to go regardless of whether it's positive or negative, right? You're just really implanting those um, inside of yourself, and then that is going to be projected into that future of like, okay, now how am I going to restructure to make this happen for the being that's experiencing that one, whatever you're experiencing. Okay. Heavy topic. Every time I have a topic and I chat about it, um the speed in which I'm talking about these things, like just me talking about it, doesn't need to have a big audience or anything like that. But just me talking about these things, like it's it almost like quickens it in my life. It makes it alive in my life. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like all of a sudden, like the things I've been talking about are just like, well, now you're doing it. So I'm not going to say it's crazy because it isn't. It's just really amazing just seeing that kind of like what I'm talking about coming to life. It's really fascinating. So I hope that's happening for you guys too, because it's really awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about retrocausality plus the human identity, because this is really where my work and the direction of the podcast is really tying into. So, what if many people are suffering because their current identity cannot carry the future trying to emerge through them? Okay, what does that mean? Remember that old identity that you have, if it cannot survive in the future because the future is trying to reorient, um, people may be suffering. They may be sabotaging. They may be trying to avoid it. They may be doing anything but actually just facing that direction that they're moving in. And so there's a little bit of suffering that goes on with it. That future is trying to emerge, it's trying to blossom inside of you. And if you're not able to get past that threshold, the initiation of going from that old identity of like, thank you for, a lot of people will say, to maybe a people pleaser. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Okay. And let's just use that as an example. And you've been a people pleaser, and like nobody's happy around you because really people pleasers don't please anybody. Ask me how I know. Um, and then their future is like, man, I really just don't want to be like this. And their future is like, oh, okay, let's orient that happening. But the asker is like resistant to that future emerging in them, and so they're still like acting out these people pleasing behaviors that is an old part of their identity, that they want it to be an old part of their identity, but they're just having a hard time releasing that, and so the future is like pushing it out of them, and it may be a little bit of suffering. Like I said, like going through the threshold and closure of life, like the little things, the closures in life, having to say goodbye, having to go through the grief of like releasing that old identity. Like there is a process that goes into it. The grief process is very much feeling like retrocausality. If you've ever gone through grief, and it doesn't have to be losing a loved one. It could be losing a job that you enjoyed. It could be losing a pet that you loved. Like there's a lot of things about in life that cause grief. It could be getting married is like losing that old identity of who you formerly were, and now you're in a new one and you're like just kind of overwhelmed by it. So there's a lot of different things that can cause grief in our lives. It could be even going from being a child to a teenager to an adult, or an adult into like an elder. There's transitions in life where old identities are naturally kind of getting pushed out, and the future is just coming in and it's emerging. And some people will have a hard time kind of integrating that into them. Your identity is so important to how your life plays out. Think of how much a story depends on who the character is. Absolutely. And you could be like, you could be in your life. If you're not being a main character in your own life, then you're a side character in your life. And who's running the show? Who do you have running the show? All right. So, yes, Wapin, absolutely. I subbed and liked the stream. Thank you, Cash Right. Love that name. Cash Right. Cash me outside. How about that? Okay. Um, so really going through that grief process is almost like the idea of retrocausality as I would imagine it, because you're not just in one time, you're in multiple points at the same time in your own life. Like I said at the beginning, we're talking about multi-location of spirit. And this is possible. The saints were doing it, other people were doing it. I know it's possible, but I'm like, how do I do that and still be safe? Meaning, have a landing spot to come back to where I just don't lose it and split my psyche open, and then can't even have a coherent sentence. Like, I want coherence. I want coherence in my identity. I want coherence in my time travel ability. I want my coherence in going into different dimensions. Like being coherent means having a grounded spot to return to when I decide it's like time to come back into this being. However that looks. I don't know how that looks yet. I'm just asking for it. That future is figuring itself out. It's going to show me how I'm going to get there. And I just get to share it with you guys along the way. Okay. All right. So, the whole idea of grief is, I can't remember the gal's name that came up with it, but it's called the swirl method. And so it's, you first you have like a set of denial about a certain thing of the grief, which is a normal part of the experience. It's okay to have denial over losing an old identity, let's say, losing that people pleaser. Maybe you were the caretaker in your family and you're just like, why doesn't anybody appreciate me for doing all of this? Okay. Oldest daughters. Um, So then there might be a withdrawal, some rejection, anger. You might feel anger, sadness. You're just kind of going through all of these phases of the grief process until you're able to kind of let that go, detach from whatever that identity was, and just thank it for carrying you through a time that you needed to have those qualities, to learn whatever the lessons were from that, and then move into your new initiated role, whatever that is. And then eventually that role is going to, it's going to serve its purpose. And then you're going to learn how to let that go too. And it gets easier the more that you do it. Um, okay. So we're talking about people still suffering because their current identity it does not fit into their future, that is trying to arrange around them. Like that old wineskin is not going to allow the new wine to sit in it. It's the biblical, a biblical parable that we can look at as far as that's concerned. So why would Jesus say that? Because we have to have that new skin. We need to have that new identity when we're going to be introducing the newness, whatever the new initiation is of our future, into our being. Okay. So the suffering may look like burnout. Burnout may look like confusion. You just don't know. You can't make a decision. Indecision. It could be an identity collapse. You just don't even know who you are anymore. You don't know how you fit into life. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing. It's just like you're in a standstill and you have no idea. Everything's collapsing around you. Okay. You might lose your job. Your husband might leave you, and your pet might run away, and then all of a sudden, like, you're just like, who am I anymore? I don't even know. I've like been going on in this certain timeline, and now everything's changing and collapsed around me, and I'm just like crying in a fetal position in my kitchen or something. Okay. That's like identity collapse looks like that, and a lot of people go through those things. Hello, great surprise to catch you, love. Yoda Noda. Love that name too. Thank you for the sub, Cash. And yeah, if you guys are here, please do sub. And uh, I like to put up future podcasts. So make sure you hit the like button, hit the notification bell, or whatever it's called. Okay. And so the other meaning of what suffering might look like is nervous system tension. And a lot of people are experiencing this right now. Like 30 to 40% of the population of America, at least, is experiencing one of these like areas here that I've like kind of gotten an idea. Maybe I'm just in certain circles, but that's what I'm seeing, this nervous system tension, the identity collapsing, the confusion, and burnout. And a lot of this does have to do with the fact that we're in this digital informational age where technology is just like expanding further and further and further. And the real question is, where do humans fit into this future? And a lot of people are terrified of what that answer may or may not be. They don't know what it is. All they know is like there's collapse happening. I'm burnt out. I can't keep up with the things. Okay. And that's what suffering may look like. All right. So there is a certain level of incompatibility with the old self and the emerging future orientation. So that incompatibility is kind of showing up in these um, events of what might be deemed suffering, which is burnout, suffering. Oh, absolutely 100% yes. Confusion, yes. Identity collapse, yes. Nervous system tension, yes. That's why I focus really heavily on how is your nervous system doing? That's your check in with yourself. How's your body feeling? Are you feeling tense in certain areas? I've been working out, so, but I always have like a lot of tension in my neck. And so, like, a big part of my workouts are like stretching, and, just pushing my body in certain ways to like release the somatic tension that's sitting in certain areas of my being. Like, it's really weird. I did this, not really weird, I shouldn't say that. I did a fascial release on my breastbone, and now like every once in a while it'll pop, and so it's like there's still something hanging in there, and until I like fascially am able to release that tension, um it's still just gonna like kind of be there. So really a lot of the work that I'm doing right now has been heavily on emotional repair. How do I get out of the codependency that I've kind of determined has been a generational thing that's been in my family for a while? And I had to like face it head on. Like, I had no choice. My future was like, if you want to have a clean if you want to have clean energy, and you want to be a really clean form where things will flow through, like, you're going to have to face codependency. You're going to have to through grief of relieving that codependent identity that were holding. And there's a lot of forgiveness of myself for not loving myself enough to like do this sooner, and then forgiving myself and others and the relationship that I have with them, because I'm stubborn AF. Like, I will admit it, I'm very stubborn. So these are all old structures that I like emotionally and mentally and spiritually had to go through. And now I'm kind of completing that process of physically going through and cleaning up the tension that's in my body, that is stored memory of these emotional experiences that I had, that got stored because I decided like for 12 years I wasn't going to have any feelings. Okay? So if you're saying like I don't feel, you're emotionally frozen. I don't know how to feel. Emotionally frozen. Okay. So my future orientation was pushing at me, and I was like, you're going to get it one way or another. And I remember when I asked for having the clean energy, I want to have clean energy. I don't want to have this confusion anymore. I don't know about that. That was in 2023. No, 2022. I asked for it. Summer 2022. Maybe it was the fall. I was like, I really just want clean energy. Clean energy. Just clean it out of me. I went to Hawaii and I had this really miraculous and amazing experience where I was like, I was in somewhere. I was not on Earth. I was definitely in some other dimension. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is just a taste of what's to come, right? And I was like, I want more of that. I want more of that experience. I want more of that transcendental, like whatever that was. How do I get there? And it's taking me, what, 2022, so we're almost 4 years to really just clean up the things, and I take it slow, so I know that I'm a lot slower than most people on it, but it's a lot to work through. I want clean energy too. Careful what you ask for. I feel like I've been burning trash to boil water for 20 years, metaphorically speaking. Well, good to see you, and welcome, and thank you for joining me. So yeah, that's just in my experience. As I'm going towards this, how do I manage time better? How do I manage the movement and the direction that I am here purpose to do on earth, whatever that purpose is, however many people I need to be interacting with? How do I do that cleanly, and how do I do that to where I'm listening to that future trying to emerge in, and letting it and receiving it with ease, right? That's really what we're training to do when we're cleaning that up, is we're learning how to grieve with ease and grace. Okay. And it's a very lovely and and sometimes not so gentle cycle that you have to go through. um, Last year was incredibly difficult for me, just emotionally, mentally getting through last year was very, very difficult. Okay. So I'm not saying that it's the most easiest thing. And that's why when you come up to the threshold of it, of that initiation, are you going to step into it? It is, I do acknowledge that it is a very tough step forward, but it also is very rewarding once you do let go of those things. So, um, just a word of to the wise. So you guys know what you're getting into when you get there. If you're, unless you're already there, and if you are, great, awesome, love that. Um, soul, soul siblings, all right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about threshold consciousness because we do talk a lot about the thresholds as we're discussing these things. The timelines past, present, and future remind me of the Terminator movies. The machines of the future keep sending Terminators to the past to keep their timelines and selves from being destroyed. That's an amazing perspective. Um, isn't the Terminator and the Matrix movies, weren't they? Wasn't that storyline created by the same author? I think so. All right. So, what are thresholds? Thresholds are crossings between identities. Okay. So, knowing how to manage and which identities to keep and which ones to kind of toss away, that threshold is really kind of looking at, okay, every once in a while, well, every 2 times a year, I go through my closet and I'm like, okay, this one's, I'm going to keep this one. I'm going to get rid of this one. And I go through my 100 dresses and I'm figuring out which ones am I going to keep, which ones am I going to like give away, and which ones am I going to put up for summer, spring, summer, or fall, winter, right? That's me like going through these seasonal thresholds. With identities, it's almost the same. It's like, is this person that I am today like serving me in a way that I feel I'm going towards my future goal? Okay. So that threshold might be the in between there. Um, when Here's a good one that a lot of people will go through: when your children get to be of a certain age, they start moving out. And it's not until it's like really close to that time you're like, "Oh my gosh, now I'm going to have an empty nest." I had to face this a lot faster than I expected. When my youngest turned 13 and was in 8th grade, and then all of a sudden, like every single weekend, he was like away. He was gone. And I didn't expect that to happen so soon. The future emerged very quickly for me, and there was a bit of a mourning period that I had to go through of like, oh my gosh, okay, my youngest child, who as my identity as a mother, that's starting to change. And so the crossing of being a mother of a child that's 100% reliant on you to a child that's like kind of reliant on you really was kind of a kick in the pants for me, because I was like, well, now what do I do? Now what do I do with my time? Because every weekend it was just me and him, and us doing whatever we do together. So that identity shift started changing, and then eventually, in a few years, I'm just going to have adult children. And then what do I do? So really now my crossing is moving through that change in identity, from having young children who are reliant on me to having just adult children. And so that is a threshold that a lot of people may not know is a threshold, but that initiation into that, having adult children only, and then all of a sudden, like, what are you doing with your life? Because being a mother gives you a certain meaning, but when that is kind of taken away from them turning into an adult, and like you've done your job and you hope that you did a great one, that's that threshold. Okay. um, Eras are also thresholds. So a changing of the eras can be like I was talking about in 1976, where the seed of the digital age or the information age was just planted. Like this is pre-internet, pre personal computers. It was just like a thought in a beginning, and so that era shift, there's kind of still a little bit of a mourning period or a grief period going on from people who are used to how things used to be, where we weren't plugged into our computers and our phones and whatever other devices were plugged into all the time. Like everything, you had to do in person. Most of the transactions were in cash. And there was just a certain way that life was back then. You were a little bit more in tune with your community around you because that is the social, interpersonal skill that you were integrating with. So that era is still kind of being mourned to a certain degree. A lot of people are just like, I find myself doing it sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have to do this thing on the phone, I can feel the frustration rise in me of like, like having to put another app on my phone just drives me up the wall. I don't know if you guys experience that as well, but I'm just like, I don't want another app. I don't want the 6-digit pin message to me on my phone or to my email. I don't want to have to log into my email. It's like there's a lot of things where I'm just like, I don't want to participate in this digital age. And like eventually it's just like you have to kind of get around and do it or whatever. But there's an era where we weren't using any of these devices that I frequently do think about and mourn that it isn't more like that. Like we're moving into this very plugged in and unseen infrastructure being built in front of us. Okay. Thresholds are also states of organization, and thresholds can often feel chaotic or uncertain and or disorienting, and I talked a lot about that in the last two episodes, so I'm not going to get too deep into the conversation, but the thresholds can feel that way because you're in this middle space. Like um, from September until now, I was trying to figure out what am I going to do with my time, and I spend a lot of time with myself. I don't even know what my week I like honestly, I don't even know what I do on my weekends. I can't. Like, I know I gardened this weekend, but like, as far as the time that I spent doing anything else, I know I podcast, but most of the time I'm just kind of like flowing and just relaxing and not really engaging too much in the world around me. I did work out a lot, but um, so me like joining a gym to like establish a new community because I'm not getting that from being a mother. I had to like push that I have to change that identity and then build a new community of people that I can have around me or just a normal ritual or a place to go so that I'm like still integrating with the world around me. Now, the threshold is going to feel that chaotic or uncertain or even disorienting because that old reality, when it's weakening, it's just falling apart before that new one starts to stabilize. Okay. And that in between period, that transition period is very chaotic. It can be very disorienting. You have no idea what's going to happen. And you're watching this old familiar thing that you're so used to and comforted by fall apart and weaken and go away while this new thing it's not even put together yet. So that's why that feels that way. So the future often will destabilize the present. Okay. Remember those feelings of uncertainty before that new one fully arrives. So, what are some symptoms of threshold states so that you can identify it in your own life? So, personally, it may come up as exhaustion. You might just feel exhausted. You may feel grief without like any clear reason why that's happening. Um, Things that you used to desire in your life are like dissolving. So, I think about 15, 20 years ago, um, I really loved to drink and party and have a good time. Um, but that desire just dissolved away once I like had a new identity pull in. So that threshold state, I just stopped wanting that and I kind of moved to a different identity. Personally, it might show up also as loss of meaning in your life, and meaning making is important. That purpose in life is important. And so remember that loss of meaning. It could be where, having a young child that's dependent on you, like heavily dependent on you, that can give you meaning. But when that goes away, that loss of meaning is going to personally affect you. Okay. You might have a strange intuition. You might have emotional volatility. You might be craving a certain level of authenticity in yourself, and or you might have an inability to tolerate older environments. So me going into a bar regularly like I used to, 15, 20 years ago, I probably won't be able to tolerate that lifestyle as much because I've like shifted into a new state of being. Okay. What does it look like collectively? Being all around, like, just socially, how we interact with our world. It can look at like institutional distrust. It could be a narrative collapse. Okay. It could be a technological acceleration, which is happening right now with AI. That's a big transition, an era of where we didn't have that, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere. It could be identity fragmentation and just nervous system overload, so collectively looking at those pieces there as well. so yesterday I was talking about Jubilee and how it ties to retrocausality. So Jubilee is what may happen when that future coherence begins to pressure the unsustainable structures that are currently there. Um, it could be the financial system, it could be the education system. I mean, we're starting to see some fragments and certain pressure on these institutions that are breaking apart. Um, And it could just be a contraction period. It doesn't necessarily mean it completely falls apart, but there is a weakening that is happening, politically, financially, and just in relationships. You can see these pressures happening in different areas where the structures are kind of falling apart. People are losing trust in it. They're not giving their attention to it any longer. And it's it's a pretty big topic and conversation, and I'm still like kind of diving into how do I interpret that. But I think the biggest thing is that one of the things that I see happening as far as the future is we're moving from where physical labor, meaning you're actually like doing things on a manufacturing line, or you're going into a mine and you're pulling a resource out of it, and you have an employer that's paying you a certain amount an hour to have those things happen. We're moving away from that, and this is my theory and hypothesis, and so it's not like I'm not making any claims, but we're moving into a place where your attention is going to be the like the resource, things you pay attention to, how much you interact with certain apps, websites, tools, everything that kind of stuff. How you feel about it is going to be a resource that is going to be starting to be farmed because of how AI is going to start interacting with the human being. Okay. So release happens because the future cannot stabilize through the overloaded systems, meaning that they have so much pressure and collapse, and now something new is coming in. So, what is that new thing that's coming in? And in your life, when you're looking at your timelines and where you're going, how is that interacting with your present? How are you preparing yourself for that? Okay. And the future does not always arrive gently. Um, I think that's, a lot of people are kind of feeling that, but they can't voice what that is. They're just feeling the discomfort and kind of the instability and uncertainty of being in this threshold moment, because we really are, with, if we're just looking at technology in general, we really are in this threshold moment of really moving away from that old thing where I was telling you, like, I was kind of mourning, being in the 80s and 90s, and not having all of this technological pressure, to now, how is that integrating in my life? How am I going to maintain my agency as I move into the future, and watch these structures kind of, some of them are going to collapse, there's going to be new structures that pop up, and how am I interacting in that? And that's a question that you can ask yourself as well. So, totally up for that. And if you guys have any other questions that you're kind of positing to yourself and you're like, yeah, that's a pretty good question to continue asking myself, please drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear it. Okay. So sometimes it first appears as pressure against what can no longer continue. That's what the future emergence is going to look like. Let's see how many other. All right, I'm at 14%, so we'll just keep on going until I get to maybe 5%. I didn't charge my phone today. I wasn't looking forward to that, I guess. I wasn't seeing that future. Okay. The nervous system layer, because it's very important. So, really, the thing that was really fascinating that I learned in my digital age investigation that I did last year was realizing that the technology today is just building a mimicry of our body. In fact, our body is a muse like none other. I was listening to this really interesting podcast, and I'll have to look in my search my listen history. And I was gardening and pulling weeds and just like cutting things back. And you guys can look at my post from yesterday to see like some of the work I did. But um, I was listening to this podcast, and it was talking about seven archons, and it was talking about how the archons are glands in our body. And then um, I think there was the seven churches and how they're the glands in our body. So like the Church of Philadelphia, um, I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but the churches in Revelation, and it was like linking them to the seven different glands in our body. And then the next video I'm listening to as I'm gardening and whatever is the seven nerves in your, or the 12 nerves in your brain, and how and linking that to the Last Supper, where there's only one nerve that leaves your brain and goes into your body, which is the vagus nerve. And what does that orient around? Fear. Okay. So that is the one that's like It can be in fear, which is that dysregulated nervous system. And it was a really interesting podcast where it was like kind of comparing the one nerve that was leaving the supper, who left Judas. So it was an interesting thing, but it really brought me back to like how the human body is a muse to all of these beautiful analogies that we can use to kind of interpret our world. And so the nervous system is really amazing to look at because, like, with the vagus nerve, we're always trying to, like, you know, get it going so we can feel relaxed, so we can feel rested, and so that our body operates at the most optimal it can. Okay. Now your body is going to detect thresholds and the transition before your intellect will. Your body is going to feel it. Okay. Our bodies are amazing, and not just our nervous system, but our bones are like magnetizing all this information into our body too, that is being used by our nervous system to interpret the world around us. Okay. So constantly, your brain is scanning the exterior environment around you to see, am I safe? Is there a threat around me? And then it's also interpreting what's going on inside. Okay. And that's where your body is going to start sending you a message. Maybe, your knee hurts. Maybe you twist your ankle. Maybe you have a pain in your stomach or your liver or whatever, some sort of discomfort. Your body is like giving you that message. Hey, this doesn't feel good. Okay. So your body is this really amazing detection system that's going to be even looking at these threshold transitions that may or may not happen, and it will show up as anxiety, as dysregulation, as overstimulation, as collapse, or even as numbness. Maybe you're not wanting to feel anything. Maybe you are overstimulated and like just checked out. Like, don't give me any more information. So, and it may sometimes reflect information overload between timelines of selfhood. Okay. So, I think here is, it's really interesting that people put these labels on themselves of, and I do it to a certain extent too. And I kind of just like walk it back. So, one of the things is, I'm in perimenopause, and all of these symptoms are from perimenopause. And it's just like this new concept that showed up a few years ago because we went through quarantine. And and perimenopause is like the period before a woman enters menopause. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in that. And then I'm like, am I really in that though? And I start to like question it. Like, am I just grabbing a hold of this identity that may not even like fit in my identity, in my current timeline, in my current being, right? And so I kind of caution myself about self-diagnosing myself or adding these labels onto myself that may not fit my identity. Okay. And it's really easy with the way that we have our social media to kind of start feeding yourself. The ads are so good at personal algorithm um, targeting. So, if you're a 30-year-old male living in a certain region, the algorithm is going to target with great precision to get you to buy or pay attention or whatever energy exchange that thing is wanting from you. Okay, so we have a lot of these things kind of plugged into us, much like the Matrix. And it's like, are you going to be able to unplug all of those things that just are kind of globbing onto you and like sucking out your energy? Like I said, this is the future. You're the future resource, and you don't have to be plugged into anything to be that resource. It's fascinating, and I hope I can really give it credence in a future podcast and talk about that, because it's a really fascinating thing as I've been doing my research on this in these last episodes of really plugging into, oh, okay, I see now. And a part of that was looking at the past Jubilee cycles and saying, okay, well, in 1776, there was the American Revolution, there was the French Revolution, there was a lot of things going on, where the future was just reorienting. And it was, part of this Jubilee was collapsing old systems and then going into a new system, which is the birth of the Constitution, which is amazing. And that's not just, American minds, it was a lot of different minds during the, is it the Illumination period? Oh my gracious. My future timeline is me recalling things really well. Janix here. Hello. All right. So, not all suffering is spiritual awakening. Okay. Sometimes it could just be overload, and that's completely fine and normal. Um, it doesn't all have to be spiritual awakening. In fact, um, if spiritual awakening is important, but if you're constantly just like, oh, I just want to be ascending, I want to be ascending, descending is very, very important for you to be cleaning all of your energy up. So you've got to have it clean below and above, and then awakening just feels a lot better. It's a little bit more integrated when everything is being looked at. Okay, but modern humans are under unprecedented cognitive and technological pressure. Like, I don't even know if in Mesopotamian times, because I was listening to this Mesopotamian like podcast as well, and they were talking about how they were charting the skies. They were really looking at energy. They had really like impeccable math, very good organization. They were able to do like really like, how do I say it? They were able to do like really intrinsic and like deep mathematical work, and they were able to like distribute labor properly. And so I'm like, okay, if they were doing that in that time, was there cognitive, did they have cognitive overload as they're trying to like figure all of this stuff out? Did they have the same cognitive overload as we do today, that we're trying to like both be industrial labor and be energetically farmed at the same time? Like, was that happening to the people in Mesopotamia? I don't know. That's like my question. That that's where I go. Um, but I can say, like, just looking at the past, 250 years that America's been around, um, the time that we're in is very, very heavy cognitive overload. There's tons of technological pressure, especially with how quickly AI is just being like thrown together. It's pretty fascinating to watch and kind of mull over. Okay, where are we? Oh my gosh. Okay, I need to speed it up here. So, digital civilization and the future poll, we're going to be looking at the AI, the algorithms, the digital systems. They're increasingly starting to shape your identity and influence your perception. Okay, remember that targeted algorithm, it was really, they call them influencers for heaven's sake. They're influencing your perception of where to spend your labor money. Okay, that money that you work really, really hard to gather. The influencers are influencing your perception. Okay, with the AI, the algorithms, and the digital systems, it's also like predicting your behavior as well. Yesterday, not come from live. Oh. Do you feel family members pull you down or try to keep you in their timeline? They absolutely can and will if you let them. At the beginning of my arc, so, about 3 months ago when I started with sovereign interiority, is where is your agency? Where is your sovereignty? How engaged are you in your own self? Okay. Like, who's driving your meat suit around? Like, who's guiding you? Is it you? Are you speaking up for yourself? Are you maintaining your boundaries? Are you driving your ship? Or are you placing yourself in service to others? Thinking that you're doing something altruistic, but really it's just self abandonment. Okay. That really is that really is the base question when we're setting that foundation of who's driving, where am I, who am I, where am I going. Okay, really setting that foundation, and analyzing. It's not that you have to like be hateful and cut people off. It's, you know i i've done this for I've done this for this person, and they're not grateful for, what I've done. And maybe you're just like putting yourself out there, not really thinking like, I'm doing this because it feels good to me and because it makes me feel loved. And really, it's like, do you love yourself enough to get into your own driver's seat and start like going in the direction that you want to go? Okay. And I'm not saying that to come down on you. I'm saying that because I had to learn those lessons myself, and be really influenced by my family in different ways. Um, what about you, Took? What do you do for? Uh, what do I do for work? I spend money. Spend money buying things for a company. Okay. So the algorithms, the AI algorithms, just kind of get back into the topic. I just wanted to answer Yoda Noda um, question. Um, these systems are predicting behavior. They're narrowing possibilities down. They're doing it with great precision, and they're able to optimize attention based on that. Okay. I I mean, I think that we're so tracked that eventually in grocery stores, the cost that you see for an item, be it online or in person, is going to change based on who you are, how much you make annually, what you pay attention to, your previous, what you're actually going to order, And all of those things changed based on your region, your career, your gender, your age, and for a 25-year-old and a 45-year-old, that same product is going to be a different price. Like, I think that that is how they're able to optimize, and that's just a theory. And it's just my theory. I don't know if it's real or not. But it's just something that I've observed and something that's come into my mind of like trying to figure out what's really going on here. I really think that that's happening. So the question is, are humans still consciously choosing future, or is it increasingly being pulled into pre-engineered probability pathways because of the AI, because of the algorithms, because of how the digital systems are integrating with the human system? Okay, and they're very much related. Just like we can entrain with one another with our nervous systems, just as we can entrain with one another, we can entrain with these digital synthetic nervous systems that are being built right now. Look up brain computer interface, BCI. They don't even have to, like, people are afraid of like brain chips or chips in your hand or anything like that. They don't need it. They don't need it. They've come up with ways around it. It's pretty amazing. Okay. I'm at 9%. Okay, so individuation as retrocausal pull. So Carl Jung was a um, big around individuation. Okay, and with this, it may function like the future authentic self pulling against the conditioned self. So you've conditioned yourself to be where you are right now. But that future authentic self that's out there doing all the possibilities, okay, is pulling at the conditioned self, trying to pull it into this future. And so just really looking at that simply is the future authentic self, the true self is not fully invented in the present. Okay, just think about that. Your true self, who you are here, is not fully invented, it's not fully put together here in the present. Okay, it's gradually organizing um, us or you or towards a greater coherence. Okay, so you have to it's almost like you have to be not just in the present, but you've got to be in the future and in the past as well. Okay, in order to be wholly individuated, you need to have access into these past and future timelines. And that's retrocausal that's retrocausal psychologically. Okay, being able to not just be present, but to be pulled into the future. Okay, so it's almost like you're sitting in the past in your present because that future is pulling you. Okay, and then just gonna bring in what my friend Wappin said at the beginning. The past and future are basically other presents or parts of the present in an overarching storyline. Okay. So that storyline is like laid out, and the future's like trying to magnetize you over here. Okay, let's go. And, you're still sitting in this the the past and in the future while you're present. So it's like this really well integrated timeline. Um, and as it's pulling you into that future, it's bringing you into a greater coherence with yourself. Okay, and maybe that's what the Taurus field is. Maybe that's what that Taurus field is, and that's Taurus, Taurus field. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the shadow aspect of retrocausality. And then I have a few questions I'm going to ask the audience, just to kind of mull over. But the shadow aspect of retrocausality, because it's very important that when we're doing this safely, we're really looking at, what are possible shadow aspects of this? What are the lighter aspects of this? What are we fully integrating in? What are we stepping ourselves into? Because I'm all about like whole body safety as we're kind of exploring these new places. And this is kind of like a journey into the inner verse. And the inner verse is not like the outer space, it's the inner space. So humans can become trapped by catastrophic future imagination, meaning that they think that some apocalyptic destruction, complete collapse, everyone dies situation is going to happen. So, this could be a trap that people get into. And boy, don't we know it that there's a lot of thoughts out there that do fall into this category. There's also doom loops. People just think constantly something doom is going to happen. Definitely out there. Fear projections. We did kind of go into this a little bit in the beginning, but I do want to just kind of bring us back. That is a shadow aspect of retrocausality that people can get stuck in. And then algorithmic fear conditioning, meaning that humans may not necessarily be the ones feeding that. It could be an algorithm that is tapped into this fear conditioning that is being fed to you as well. So, very important nuance. I do want to just like put that out there because we're talking about doing this safely. Um, Not everything in the future necessarily means that it's wisdom. It could be just keeping you in that fear loop, that doom loop spell. And anticipation, while it's a great gift, doesn't always necessarily have to be positive. It could be a negative experience too, where it could be a trauma anticipation. Okay, and that those trauma loops do happen. It's very cyclical. I talk about it all the time in my podcast. And so just kind of keep those things in mind. If those things are coming up for you, really kind of take a step back and analyze what's going on here. What loop did I get stuck in? Okay. Have a good night, Janik. All right. Um, so, one other thing is sovereign interiority. We did talk about this a little bit. So, if multiple futures compete for your attention, who is governing it? So, remember, the 5D is not just this one amazing probability that's going to happen, it's multiple probabilities, okay? It's many, 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 many probabilities that you can't even imagine how many probabilities are in that 5D perspective. So if there are multiple different probabilities that are competing for your attention, if you're not in your own sovereignty, meaning your own agency of choosing, like, because you do have a choice in this, choosing which way direction you're going, then and you're not driving your you're not authoring your own like life story as your main character, then who is governing that inner world if you're not doing it? Okay? Because if you're not doing it, something or someone will. So really kind of take a step back and analyze that about yourself. And I think Yoda Yoda Nada asked the question, do you feel family members pull you down or try to keep you in their timelines? Yes, absolutely they will, especially if you're vacated from the driver's seat of your life. Okay? This is so important. And go back and listen to the sovereign interiority stream that I did, because I paint out a lot of really good stories about people who have not been driving in their own driver's seat of their own body, of their own flesh suit. And I witnessed pretty wild things happening and very interesting truths about people who just let go of that. Okay. So this is going to start feeding into the future of the arc, which is, um, I think I have like 4 more streams after this before I finish the full arc of this topic. So, and it's going to end with signal, which is one of the things. The sovereign interiority, that was one of the first episodes that I did in my arc. And so please go back and watch that. Nervous system governance was also another one that just, if you're asking yourself, um, if there's multiple futures that I have a choice of choosing and are wanting my attention, and maybe one is fear, maybe one is your dreams, maybe meaning like your vision, like this is, I imagine myself doing this, I imagine myself being this. um those things are competing for your attention. Your attention is the most valuable currency that you have right now, and it's only going to get more valuable as we step into this new era. Allegedly, could it be? Not making claims, but I think that's where we're going from what I could tell. Okay. Now I wanted to pose some questions to you guys. So, really just slowing down and being present in your body. Okay, let's relax. Really ask yourself, what future am I unconsciously organizing around? Okay. What future am I unconsciously organizing around? The next question I will ask is, what identity no longer feels survivable? What identity am I embodying that no longer feels survivable? It just feels like it's collapsing right now. The next question I'm going to ask is, what patterns feel increasingly incompatible with who I am becoming? The next question is, what if confusion is sometimes transitional rather than terminal? What if confusion is popping in because it may be a transition rather than being terminal? And then finally, the last question I will ask is, what if collapse and emergence can reassemble each other initially? What if collapse and emergence can resemble each other initially? Because that might mean that you're in right there in the middle. So Ask yourself those questions. All right. So I know it's not all the fanfare. Maybe it's a lot above everybody's heads, but this is a really interesting topic. I am so glad that you guys stuck around and listened. I hope you got a lot out of it. Thank you guys so much for engaging and, it being a part of the chat. Um, what are your thoughts about retrocausality? I'd love to have some discussion threads in the video when it posts. So, in closing, let's just say that maybe the future is not merely something waiting for us, and maybe many people are not lost, okay? But they are standing inside instability that occurs when one version of self is ending before the next has fully arrived. And that really is, how are we moving in our time? What direction are we going? And this is going to close this unit. It was a short unit. So it started with thresholds, closures, and initiation. We talked about Jubilee, and then finally ending it in retrocausality. Um, and so next week, we're going to start a new unit. And let me see if I can pull it up because I don't think I've chatted about it. Which is going to be context. So, what world are you operating inside? And then we will, oh, I have three more. So then we'll end with expression, which is how it's felt and transmitted. How are you transmitting? And that is the signal that you're sending out. So we're going to end with that, and that will fully embody our whole, how we organize and reorient, and what we're looking for as we're readying ourselves to be really fantastical beings that have beautiful technology already like implanted in us, that we are the muse of so much. um it's just incredible. Like, it's just so fascinating and beautiful and wonderful, how amazing and how radical we are to be like the muse of life around us. So it's very lovely. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. My name is Amelie. This has been episode 69 with Retro Causality. Please remember to like, subscribe, and if you want to follow and keep posted on my upcoming episodes, please hit the notification bell. If you feel so inclined, I have a buy me a coffee. Please look in my YouTube page, and you should be able to find that link there. And make sure you follow me on other platforms. I have an Instagram and I have a Facebook there as well. So, anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I am going to sign off. All right. Have a good one. See you next